Hello everyone, I'm very pleased to have our next educated interview with Mr. Timothy Shear from the United States, who is the CEO of Capital City Energy Group Incorporated, as well as Senior Managing Director of Capital City Partners Incorporated. Hello team, welcome back to Mongolia.
It's wonderful to be back and here with you.
How many times have you been to Mongolia?
I have been to Mongolia 3 times. First in 1998, and as you know, last year, and now today.
Yes. I see after 1992, you came back to Mongolia more than 15 years, right?
1998 was 20 years ago.
Oh, exactly. Okay, excuse my calculation.
In fact, as a quick aside, I met at the Rotary Club of Ulaanbaatar the North American and European lady that invited me to the Rotary meeting 20 years ago.
I see. Wow. What a long journey for you to keep coming back to the country. I'm very pleased that you decided to come back. Maybe if you could explain a little more about what brought you back to Mongolia after 20 years.
Well, we had the great good fortune in my presidential year with our Rotary Club in Ohio of becoming acquainted with the people that are now our sister club at the Rotary Club of Narlag Ulaanbaatar, and we had a wonderful literary and literacy project that we brought in collaboration with Narlag to Mongolia, namely 20,000 books from Ohio for the children.
I'm very pleased to find out about the project. We actually had the privilege to learn more about the project you're doing, which is providing thousands of books for free to rural area readers and children and youth and libraries. I'd like to thank you very much for that.
You are so welcome. And our folks in Ohio are so wonderfully enthused about building these bridges to Mongolia, and our children both sides of the Pacific as well.
Of course. Besides your personal or more, social projects, you also have business interests in Mongolia. If you could probably explain a little more about your professional background, specifically to the 2 organizations you are directing nowadays, I think that would be interesting.
Well, thank you. We have a small boutique, fully licensed American broker-dealer. It is part of RBC Assets, RBC Capital, which is the number 5 broker-dealer in America and an outgrowth of Royal Bank of Canada. We have an expertise that's varied, and when I say boutique, we've done some rather interesting smaller investment banking projects. Among them, we had a wonderful experience 10 to 15 years ago packaging oil and gas interests in North America. Although we did a little bit of work internationally. That company was subsequently taken public. I ended up becoming the president of that company, and we have some alternative energy interests, particularly in Mongolia.
So in particular to Mongolia, what kind of potentials do you see with regard to the 2 main businesses you just mentioned?
Well, I want to start with, very briefly, the energy business, because the alternative energy opportunities in Mongolia are substantial. Solar, wind, etc. With the gathering momentum on development for transportation of hydrocarbons pursuant to recent statements of intent by Mr. Putin in Russia and Mr. Batulga in Mongolia, and of course notably the Chinese premier as well. There is a tremendous opportunity to explore finally what is the likely existence of tremendous hydrocarbons in subterranean Mongolia. There's much more that could be said, but when the political will collectively exists and based upon the new cooperation between the United States and Mongolia, we think that there is very exciting potential here.
Yeah, you touched upon a very important point that has to be precedent to this kind of mega projects, long-term projects like energy efficient alternative energy projects, the political will. Maybe if you could explain a little more about what kind of progress have you seen with regard to Mongolia-US relations as a businessman?
Of course, it is a complicated equation, Zula, but I would point to the recent conversations that were highlighted by the visit of your Prime Minister to meet with our Secretary of State, Mr. Pompeo, and they expressed a tremendous intent to cooperate. There's other opportunities out there, like the suggestion that Mongolian cashmere may be available for import to the United States without any tariff tax whatsoever. That is an exciting development, especially for Americans who historically only see opportunities in the sales, in the purchase of cashmere from Inner Mongolia, which of course is China.
I see. If you could explain a little bit about the alternative energy project, the potential project from your side, maybe briefly about the technology, how it is different.
Well, I would say two things. We have continuing interest in the creation of more solar power facilities. There was a recent blackout in Ulaanbaatar that demonstrate that with whether solar or wind, these supplemental services are going to be influential when the political will exists to make a reliable power purchase agreement. With solar, one of the questions is battery backup, because of course in peak hours of demand, when the sun is not shining, one has to have some storage capacity for that energy. We believe that our network of professionals, which is really quite global in nature, that there might be some interesting intellectual property we could bring to Mongolia. The revolutionary technology that we're very excited about is bringing new generation carbon capture opportunities that can not only capture the carbon dioxide, the sulfides, etc., that coal gives off when it's burned, but furthermore, it can produce electricity at a very scalable, potentially industrial level, and do it in a manner that is not only cost effective, but actually take the growing use of commodity carbon dioxide and sell that byproduct.
It sounds like that kind of project or technology can be useful not only in Mongolia, but in many other parts of the world, especially many other emerging cities in Asia.
Absolutely. However, I will tell you, without engaging in proprietary discussion, we have some partners at the very highest levels in the United States that are particularly interested in sharing this technology with Mongolia, if possible, because quite frankly, one of those partners has as deep a history with Mongolian friendship and cooperation as I do. He came here as a scientist 25 years ago.
We really hope to see this project economically and environmentally friendly project going forward. I'd like to ask you a little more on your other side of the business, other arm of the business, the financial boutique firm. If you could explain a bit more about the kind of services you provide and the kind of potentials you see in Mongolia, that would be interesting.
Well, our services can be rather diversified, and as an independent broker-dealer, we have some opportunities that have latitude that the larger firms do not have. I came to Mongolia first in 1998 because of an electronic friendship I had established with the chairman at that time of the Mongolian Stock Exchange. Of course, it was the youngest bourse on the planet at that time. It became very exciting for me to think about the emerging securities issues. I remain interested in that. I think there is a niche market in the United States of serious investors that could have further interest. I think that the legal environment could become more conducive to bringing expatriate investment capital to Mongolia. And conversely, we have conversations going on with the financial people in the emerging insurance industry in Mongolia, where some of our electronic expertise may be helpful in establishing an electronic platform for them to sell their product to the public.
In terms of outbound from Mongolia to U.S. opportunities in that regard, what kind of opportunities do you see?
For Mongolian capital in the United States?
Yes.
Well, I would say in particular my expertise has included for 25 years being involved in bank analysis of their stock securities and also making markets occasionally in those securities. They tend to be very, very conservative investments with multiple government auditors so that one can believe in the numbers that one sees in those investments. They're attractive. They're particularly remunerative, meaning nice profit opportunities in a rising interest rate environment. And frankly, there are a lot of mergers and acquisitions by the bigger banks acquiring the smaller banks that are our specialty, and that might have particular interest for certain Mongolian investors.
Have you talked to certain Mongolian investors who already showed interest in getting involved?
Yes, potentially.
Right. Do you see any legal or any regulatory obstacles you think that might?
Well, of course, the legal environment is complex. So in the space, for purposes of brevity in our discussion today, I would simply say that there are always obstacles, but those are challenges.
And challenges can be overcome.
One would hope so.
Yeah, over time, over partnership, I guess over continuous.
Certainly my tenure of interest over several years in Mongolia would demonstrate my optimism.
Of course, yes. In going forward, as a professional coming from a place where both of the businesses you talked about in terms of the energy efficiency technology as well as the
financial
market, what kind of how would I say the niche opportunities you see for Mongolian not only the investors but also the Mongolian business people in general in terms of leveraging what's happening around us. It does not have to be only got to do with US, but maybe with China, Russia you already talked about, but with the rest of the region.
It is a global village, of course. That may be not the ideal vernacular, but I was recently in Hovd on our charitable project. It is deeply impressive to me to see the development of commerce in a distant city. So it is far more than UB. I had the great pleasure of meeting an industrialist here in UB who is from Hovd, and he has helped me further understand the hard-working opportunities that the west of the country brings. And of course, many people in the world know that there's tremendous mineral wealth, there's tremendous agricultural wealth in Mongolia, and that's a tremendous opportunity for Mongolians and for the world as a consumer.
Thank you very much. I think within this short period of time we were able to exchange very in-depth information, because based on your based on the earlier conversation we had, you already have almost 30 years of affiliation with Mongolia, and more to come.
30 if one considers my book reading, and 20 since I first visited.
I see. Okay, but we're looking forward to having you back, and more and more how would I say, people, business people with the heart for Mongolia, not only for the heart for, I guess, for profit, but, the heart for the people and the country. And I hope to see you again soon.
Good business is good for everybody. I look forward to returning.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Zula.